Yo, what up, Kicks Army? Today I'll be showing you guys how to draw the Nike Kyrie 5 step by step. After the video is done, I'll be going through some art tips and tricks to better help improve your drawings. If drawing is not really your thing and you just want this stencil for free, understand that I have all my stencils available on my website, KicksArt.com. That is your #1 source for free sneaker stencils, and the best part is that if you want to see stencils that are going to be added to the website that are not already available on the website, you can send your request to the contact tab at the top of the page. Don't do this for me, guys. I do it for the people. More importantly, if you like these how to draw videos, make sure you leave a like, and don't forget I have a full how to draw videos playlist with over 60 how to draw videos. Like, what? And with all that being said, let's get it! Before we actually draw the shoe, we gotta set up some guidelines to make sure the shoe looks proportionally correct. To do this, we're gonna draw 2 squares right next to each other. Then we're gonna divide those 2 squares into top and bottom halves. Next, we're going to add 2 vertical lines, one on that bottom right hand quadrant and the next one on the initial left hand box. Finally, we're going to add 1 more horizontal line. This will divide up the 2 bottom quadrants into halves, and this will give us all the guidelines we need to draw out the rest of the sneaker. Now, y'all already know that I like doing the silhouette first because I feel like it's much easier getting the inner details after the silhouette is done. Once the silhouette is complete, we're going to start working on the outsole and the midsole, and especially on this part, we really want to look at that last horizontal line that we made as our guide. Once we have some of these details worked out on the outsole, we can go ahead and start working on the upper. And for the first part of the upper, we're going to start working on that heel. Now the heel might seem a little bit complicated, but it's really not that bad. Think about it like this. We have 2 slanted bars, and then underneath those 2 bars, we have 2 triangles. Obviously, one triangle is within the other one, and then within the smaller triangle, we basically have a reverse C shape inside. Now, please don't overthink this. Once you have that first bar going, just space everything else accordingly so that way it fits within that area. Don't make it more harder than it has to be. After all, isn't life already hard as it is? And right above that heel section, we're going to add the Nike swoosh, and especially for this, notice how we're staying within that initial left-hand box. If you have to go over these lines a few times to make sure that swoosh looks good. Now we're going to start working on that shroud, Venus flytrap kind of thing going on in the front where the shoelaces are going to go through. Before we flesh out those details, I'm going to go ahead and touch up the sock liner as well as the tongue real quick. Then we're going to proceed to go ahead and start adding in some of those laces as well as the padding that's going to go underneath it for that shroud area. Finally, we're going to work out that last bit of details in the outsole. With that, we are done. The drawings are already on the paper. I don't care what they say. This next stage is the inking stage, and this is my favorite and also least favorite part. It's my favorite part because now I have to actually commit to the lines that I put down. See, earlier, if there was a line that you think wasn't going to work too well, or maybe you kind of screwed up here, or this part's too thin or that part's too thick, you can go ahead and you can readjust everything because you're using pencil. And now when we bust out the markers, now you got to commit. Now you got to go ahead and be confident with your lines. So it's always important when you start out with the drawing stage that you really make sure that you have good line work going, so that way the inking stage is much better. As always, I'm using the micron marker. For the most part, I stick with either a .45 or a .30, 35 marker. I don't want to go thinner than that because they have the .25s and the .20 millimeters, but for those lower sizes, I like to use those for details like stitching or perforations. In this particular case, I don't want the lines that I'm going to be doing to be too thick. I want them to be prominent so that way I can see where they are, but I don't need them to be super thick to be defined because I'm going to try to go for a different style than I normally go for. This particular drawing, I'm going to go with a similar style that was released with the sketch images of the Kyrie 5. And if you haven't already seen my reaction to the release sketch images of the Kyrie 5, make sure you go ahead and check out that video. I uploaded it last week, I believe. It's really funny because I was just in awe of the level of greatness, level of excellence behind the design of this shoe and the drawings itself. But as opposed to my traditional drawing style where I try to keep everything really clean, I try to make all these lines super defined, super crisp, I try to have this blending be on point, I noticed that with the sketch drawings that were released for this particular shoe, the sketches themselves weren't meant to be perfect. They're not trying to go for everything to be inside the lines. They don't really care about the blending being on point. They just want to get the point across. So I'm like, you know what? For this drawing, since I'm doing a drawing of a sneaker that I just saw the reference images of, let me go ahead and let me try to replicate that same style and see how it works out. When I'm going through the coloring stage, you're going to notice that I'm not worried about making sure that my blending is super fine. I'm not worried about making sure I'm staying in between the lines and that my line work is crisp. I'm just trying to get the concept on the sheet of paper and see what happens from there. Because we saw the reference images, right? We went through everything step by step. I was appreciative of everything that I saw. And what I loved most about it is that those sketches were free. They weren't trying to be perfect. They were trying to get the point across, and they did such a good job at it. And that could potentially be one of my downplays, is I try to make everything as perfect as I can. And the problem with making something perfect is that there's no such thing as perfect. So when you're reaching for that thing that doesn't exist, you're gonna have a hard time finding it. Ooh, that's a quote. Somebody please quote me on that. At the end, I will say this. Now, I don't want to brag, because I'm not really one to brag, even though I do this all the time. But I'm gonna be real, guys. This came out pretty close to the original sketch, and it sucks too, because it's like, man, when I'm doing this, I don't like the process of me doing it. I don't like having these lines be so loose, so free, so unconnected, so undefined. Just, it's not my style. But it came out good, and that's the thing I want you guys to know. I did this, and no joke, in terms of filming, this was the shortest video I've done for a how to draw a video in a long time, especially with the amount of detail this shoe has. And if I must be honest, the end result was pretty damn good. Like, I'm not gonna lie, it was pretty good. You guys may or may not notice this, but like during the traditional outlining stage, when I have the micron marker, at least in my eyes, I'm like, man, this is some sloppy lining. Like, this is not crisp, this is not smooth, not clean. But it doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, the color is gonna matter. There's a lot of grays at the end of the day. There's a lot of darker grays, a lot of lighter grays. The outlining is not gonna matter too much. And even the coloring is not gonna matter too much. If it's consistent, it's gonna look good. And that's one thing I realized about this video. When you guys are at home and you're doing your drawings, don't try to make it look perfect. Try to make it look consistent from the start to the finish of the drawing. At the end of the day, the most important thing you can have with your artwork is consistency, okay? You don't want to have the first section of whatever you're doing to look like the Sistine Chapel, and then the second section look like a stick figure. It doesn't make any sense. And even if you're working on something and you're doing a small section and you're doing a style that's more loose, like how I'm doing, and it doesn't look good, understand that you're only looking at that small area. In the grand scheme of things, it may just turn out pretty nice, because again, I'm telling you guys, when I was working on this, I'm like, oh dear Lord, what have I done? This looks terrible. And then 10 minutes go by and it's like, oh, okay, that's not too bad. Before we end this video, we do have to talk about a few basketball things real quick. For one, Jimmy Butler is a part of the Philadelphia 76ers. That is nuts. If the Sixers weren't already a threat to go ahead and make it out of the East, well, now they kind of are, because think about it. Now you have them, you have Toronto, you have Boston, and then you have Milwaukee. All these four teams looking real good in the East. Sheesh. Now I'm definitely going to be excited for the Eastern Conference, because now with this addition, with Jimmy Butler being added to the roster, now I'm not going to throw this out there because it could matter to, you know, nobody, but at least for me, it feels like the Warriors got a real problem with whoever comes out of the East. Assuming, you know, one of their all-stars gets injured, but whatever, that's besides the point. And then lastly, apparently, Carmelo Anthony is having a problem right now with the Houston Rockets. We saw a tweet from Mark Stein saying the Rockets have denied that they are waiving Carmelo Anthony, but two sources, not one, but two sources close to the situation say that Carmelo has been informed that his brief time with the team will soon be ending. Like, what the heck? Carmelo Anthony has also been listed out for today's game against the Pacers due to a quote-unquote illness. Remember in the beginning of the year when I was saying, you know, I think it's really great for Carmelo Anthony that he's going to be with the team, because if he's ever going to have success again in the NBA, it's going to be with the Houston Rockets. And now we're finally hearing reports that they could potentially, most likely, will let him go very soon. Like, come on, Carmelo. Word through the grapevine is that they're going to go ahead and they're going to try to talk to him, trying to reevaluate what his best position on the team should be, so that way they can come up with a good game plan. But man, Carmelo, it's such a fall from grace. And it's not like you had, you know, very high points in your career. I mean, I think you made it to the conference finals like once, which, I mean, whatever. That's a feat in and of itself. But that happened like, what, more than 10 years ago? Honestly, have no idea where he's gonna go when it doesn't work out in Houston. I'm sure there's another team that will pick him up. The word is that Miami might be interested, but I mean, guys, I'm not really too hopeful on this whole Carmelo Anthony thing. This would be his best chance of actually having some decent success. These Rockets made it to the conference finals last season, and they were one Chris Paul injury away from go ahead and make it to the NBA finals and probably destroying the Cavs. So, like, I understand they lost a few defensive pieces, okay, but come on, Carmelo, you can make it work, can't you? Can't you? You Carmelo Anthony fans on there, all three of you, guys, I'm sorry. I think we're looking at the end. Not necessarily the end of his career, but the end of him having any relevance in the NBA whatsoever. But that's going to do it for today's video. If you guys enjoyed these daily sneaker drawing videos, make sure you hit that like button. If you're new to the channel, make sure you hit the subscribe button and bounce past that bell and get post notifications. Don't forget to visit KicksArt.com for all your sneaker stencil needs. Guys, y'all already know that I'm doing daily content, so I will see you guys tomorrow. Yay!